So, couple of reasons to be excited if you are a Bills fan this week. Not only did the Bills, in front of a national audience on Monday Night Football, defeat San Francisco 34-17, but their quarterback, Josh Allen, 32 of 40, 375, 4 touchdowns, wins AFC Offensive Player of the Week for the third time, and maybe that led to this. The Bills front office extended Brandon Beane through the 2025 season. Now he and Sean McDermott, who earlier this year also signed an extension through the end of the 2025 season, are here for the foreseeable future. And what I mean by one leading to the other is that GMs and quarterbacks are often linked. Their fates are often linked, and so is the head coach to some extent as well. So Brandon Beane really needed to nail it with Josh Allen, and it certainly looks like he has. They had the patience with him. They did the research on him in the first place, even when there were detractors all across the league, all across, league circles and media alike. They stuck with their guy. They picked him. They were, like I said, patient with him. They played him, even if it wasn't necessarily the plan from the outset. One half of football into 2018, they throw him in there to the Wolves, and they've just watched him grow, watched him blossom. They've had the right guys around him. In terms of coaches, they've added the right pieces around him in terms of receivers. I mean, just look at how far the offense has come since he was first here. It was basically just him and Deion Dawkins. Now he's throwing to Diggs, Brown, Beasley. He has some nice tight ends in the fold that he doesn't really even use that much. But the offensive line is rebuilt. Morse, Feliciano, terrific players. Guys that he's become best friends with. They've put running backs behind him, some young guys, Singletary, Moss. And honestly, they don't even really run the ball all that much because Josh Allen has been so good. Like, the Bills are the second most penalized team in the league. 81 penalties. They're tied with, guess who? Kansas City. 81 penalties each. The Bills have the second most penalty yards in the league. They don't run the football that well. It doesn't matter. They're 9-3 because their quarterback is fantastic. He shreds zone. He's been shredding man because his receivers now can finally win against man. And even moreover, I'm just super excited not only about Josh Allen, but because the coach and GM have shown and demonstrated this willingness an ability to grow with the league, to pay attention to what's going on around the league. They pay attention to this wave of analytics, to certain strategies, not just in terms of like roster building, but literally on the field game strategies. You guys have been here since the turn of the century. What regime has made you feel more optimistic than this one has? You can't say any of them. Most recently it was Whaley and Rex. I'm not saying in terms of optimism, I'm just going through the list here. Whaley and Rex, Whaley and Marone, Buddy Nix and Chan Gailey, Dick Duran and Marv Levy, of course, Tom Donahoe and Greg Williams, whatever. They all just go up blah, 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 this, that. And on the field, the teams are blah, 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 this and that. And you just have no optimism. Now McDermott, when he first came in, granted, he talked a lot about the process and, how many points they needed to score in order to win games, and culture trumps strategy, and that is just sending off alarms left and right. Culture trumps strategy? What? Now, I don't really believe you, because I watch you be strategical on the field. I watch you be sort of ahead of the curve than some teams are and some other coaches are, as they are just sort of married to the way it was, this old school football, and, kind of like I said earlier, this idea that you have to establish the run, you have to be disciplined. Like, the Bills are the second most penalized team, right with Kansas City, who won the Super Bowl last year, and they don't really run the ball that well, and it doesn't matter. So, obviously, I'm super optimistic, because their quarterback is throwing the ball all over the yard, and their coach is willing to grow, willing to adapt to league trends. I'm not sure this was ever more on display for Sean McDermott than it was this past Monday against San Francisco. So let's talk about that. It starts with the Bills going down the field on the first drive, 4th and goal at the 1. They go for it. Of course they go for it. The field goal doesn't necessarily help you there. You get some points on the board, but if you're San Francisco's defense and coaches and fans, don't you want them to kick the field goal? Aren't you like, good, we held them to a field goal? If they go for it, you got to think there's about a 50 maybe even more percent chance that they make it being on the 1 yard line. And so you're running a pretty good risk of the touchdown there. I think your win probability obviously goes up further if you score the touchdown rather than kicking the field goal. You're sort of admitting defeat, not in terms of the game, just in terms of the drive. Like, oh, you guys stopped us. We have to kick the field goal. It's 4th and goal to 1. We have no other choice. We have to take the points. It's one of my least favorite things that commentators say, that people who follow the league say, I think you got to take the points here. No, you absolutely do not. And does Sean McDermott let that failure on the first drive deter him in the future? No, the Bills had 2 4th downs later in the game that they ended up going for and converting. They were 2 of 3 on the night, and I am just over here just swooning, just totally in love with what I'm watching. From the coach, from the quarterback, from the receivers. Like, the receivers win against man, the quarterback wins against zone. It's just, like, I think I saw that Allen went 23 of 25 against zone coverage, and ding, 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 Pittsburgh this upcoming week plays like the soft zone, and they are like, they stay in it. I don't know if maybe they've changed a little bit. Steeler fans, if you're here, talk to me a little bit about it, because I feel like that's kind of why you guys could never beat New England, because Brady just shredded the soft zone, and for whatever reason, you guys just had to stay in it. You don't come out of it for anything. But I guess let's transition to the Steelers. The Steelers are 11-1. They lose last week to Washington. And are the Steelers like 11-1 good? I mean, the Chiefs are 11-1. Are they as good as the Chiefs? The Steelers are very, very uber, ultra talented on defense. However, this week looks like they might be missing a couple of guys. Obviously, Devin Bush has been gone since like week 5 or 6 with that injury, with the season-ending injury. Bud Dupree just last week or 2 weeks ago against, was it Baltimore? Yeah, on Wednesday evening football or Wednesday late afternoon football. He tore his ACL, so he's out for the season. He's second on the team in sacks with 8. Of course, T.J. Watt is still there, but like I said, Bush is gone. Dupree is gone. Vince Williams went on the COVID list this week, so he plays like 60 to 80% of the snaps. He won't be there. Robert Spillane plays like 80% plus for the snaps for them. He has a couple of sacks, an interception, a touchdown for them this year. He won't be there. So they're down Williams, Spillane, Dupree, Bush. Joe Hayden is in concussion protocol, and on a short week, he might not get cleared in time. So the Steelers could be down 5 starters. Now, granted, they're still talented. That's probably why they're so good in the first place, because they are still talented. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Tremaine's brother Terrell Edmonds, the safeties. T.J. Watt might win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know, maybe he definitely does. Myles Garrett probably has something to say about that. But he has 12 sacks, leads the team with 12 sacks. Looks completely unblockable. And we saw what Joey Bosa did to the Bills a couple of weeks ago. T.J. Watt is capable of doing worse. But Stephon Tuitt is still there. He's a fantastic player. Cameron Hayward is, just an old veteran in there. Old, I guess he's only 31 years old, but he's been a very reliable player for them as well. So they are still very talented on defense. I'm not so sure about their offense. Like, I have some stats on them over here. Like the Steelers, in terms of passing yards, are, let me flip it here. They're 7th in terms of passing. No, they're not 7th. They are, forgive me while I find it, 14th, little middle of the road in terms of passing yards, 14th, 3,027. Where are they in pass attempts? 2nd, 488 passing attempts, second only to Dallas. And they're 14th in total yards. Their offense has kind of abandoned the run. They didn't have any semblance of it without James Conner, but James Conner should be back this week. But he's a talented running back. Is he a superstar running back? No, absolutely not. But he is capable of going for 80 to 100 yards on you, for sure. But they just don't really run the ball. Their entire offense is like predicated on RPOs. It's all RPOs, and Ben takes a snap, looks, does he hand it off? Maybe. Or does he throw a 3-yard pass? Like, so much of their offense, how many I want to say this? Their first down run is essentially a pass. They're still willing to get the 3 to 4 yards. They just do it through the air. And this past couple of weeks, they've had serious problems with drops, and that has hindered their offense big time. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't seem like a type of offense that is going to be really effective in the long run. I'm wondering if Pittsburgh is just kind of like a 9-3 team masquerading as an 11-1 team. I think they're good. Don't get me wrong. I do not think they're a bad team. They're outstanding on defense. Obviously, I said that. Before I continue going with the offense, they're first in scoring and defense, third in yards, first in turnovers forced, first in, they have the fewest first downs against, second against the pass. Nobody passes on them. I mean, I don't know if anybody's gone for 300 yards on them. 273 yards this past week against Washington is the most total passing yards they've allowed all season. Maybe that'll become a trend. Maybe the Bills can do something with that. They forced multiple turnovers. As I said, they're first. Forced multiple turnovers in 5 out of their last 6 games and 7 out of their last 9. This past week against Washington, they didn't get any turnovers, and maybe that's kind of the key to beating them. I mean, you can give them free possessions. I talked a little bit about that last week. Anyway, they're 4th or 6th against the run. First in terms of average drive against length. Like, teams have the shortest average drive against them. Shortest plays, second in yards, like I said, first in points. So it's a task. This is a tall task for the Bills on offense. They're obviously going to be without John Brown, but they were without John Brown this past week, and I tried to make it a point in my video that I don't think he's as big of a loss as some people make it out to be, and I think that carries over again to this week. Would I like to have him? Sure, of course I'd prefer to have him out there, but the Bills they've been so good at moving the football, which is why it's kind of perplexing why Allen has had a couple of games that have just been off. I mean, Kansas City might have been weather-related, but the Chargers game 2 weeks ago, why did he only throw for 157? I don't really know. 18 of 24, still completed 75%, but it just wasn't there. I don't know. But, I mean, they were very successful running the football, and they ended up in a kind of a close game. They turned the ball over a couple times, fumbling and whatnot, and they were in a kind of a close game. This past week against San Francisco, throw. A couple weeks ago against Seattle, throw, and they're up. New England, about a month and a half ago, 154 passing yards. They try to run the ball against them. They end up in a close game, a game they probably should have lost. But I'm optimistic. I remain optimistic. Obviously, I sound like the optimist here because the defense seems to be hitting a stride a little bit. They have a task this week, even though I've kind of talked a little bit negatively about the Steelers' offense, and I think rightfully so. I mean, they only have 1 rushing touchdown longer than 3 yards this season, and it came in like week 3 against Houston. Every one of their rushing touchdowns is like 1, 2, or 3 yards. They're the dink and dunk. They almost look like the Patriots in a way. Like Juju Smith-Schuster had 28 receiving yards on 10 targets last week. What is that? Those just gross numbers. And the Bills don't need their best players to score touchdowns. And I think maybe that's true for the Steelers a little bit as well. James Washington scores for them. Benny Snell scores for them inside the red zone. And they have a ton of weapons. Claypool, obviously, Deontay Johnson, and the aforementioned Juju. But, I mean, Gabriel Davis leads the Bills in receiving touchdowns with 5. 15 players have caught a pass for the Bills this year, including Josh Allen, and 13 of them have scored touchdowns. So obviously they love to get the ball to Diggs, they love to get the ball to Beasley, but they spread out the scoring so well. They get it to Tyler Kroft, they get it to Dawson Knox. This past week they get it to Isaiah McKenzie and Gabe Davis again. So, I mean, like I said, it's been said. As I come into the final minute of my video here, it's been said. I am just in love with what I'm watching. The Bills are 9-3. They have a chance to pull within 1 game of the Steelers. Maybe knock on the door of that 2 seed. But anyway, I got to make a prediction. And listen to how I've talked. And I think I'm still going to pick the Steelers. Just because I want to see the Bills do it. I've seen them beat pretty good teams, but I haven't really seen them beat super good AFC teams, unless you want to include New England. They beat Seattle, they beat the Rams. They lost it to Kansas City, and they lost to Tennessee. So I'm going to take the Steelers until I see it. Steelers 26, Bills 23. Guys, hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle and YouTube username are the same. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Sunday. Waiting all day for Sunday night. As always, above all else, go Bills.